The ISIS crisis. Few would argue around the world, forget your political persuasion or party, forget all of that. Few would argue that evil, the manifestation of evil, is loosed and seemingly unchecked on the face of the earth today. Question, if there's a manifestation of evil on the earth, why are we quick to embrace evil and its source, but yet deny a deity and goodness? A deity as a source. We seem to be quick to embrace evil to the neglect, my atheist friend, of a divine. Interesting, think about that. We'll talk about that in other videos. So what do I mean by manifestation of evil? Beheading of innocent people, taking people into bondage, into slavery, into the sex trade, the slaughter of innocent children, the intensity of persecution only on the rise, territories being ravaged of both people, civilizations, their belongings, and their natural resources. Horrific proportions of seemingly unprecedented in recent history, evil being manifested on the earth today. And in the middle of it all, we have this book, the best-selling book of all time, that many would look at and say, this book is irrelevant. This is a first century ancient document, irrelevant to the 21st century today. I would argue with that. One sunny day, Jesus was walking through Jerusalem and saw these magnificent, incredible buildings. I can imagine the sun just gleaning off the gold on these buildings. Buildings made out of Herodian stones, 42 feet long and 10 to 12, 15 feet high. And he looked at him and he said to his disciples, as they looked at him all, he said, the day will come when not one of those stones will be left upon another. What a ridiculous lunatic type statement. Really, it's ridiculous. You couldn't lift one of those stones with 100 men, 1,000 men, yet there they are stacked. And he says, not one will be left upon another. They looked at him like, are you serious? He said, this will be a sign of the coming of the end of the age. He said, let no one deceive you. I don't even know if they're paying attention at this point. They're still back on the stones. Let no one deceive you, he said. Many will come in my name claiming to be a Messiah. Hey, go to another internet page off ISIS and you'll see a guy in South America to this day claiming to be the Messiah, has thousands of followers. And people have always been coming claiming to be the Messiah. He says, in the end of the age, here's what you're going to see. Wars and rumors of wars. Nations will rise up against nations, that's coalitions, and kingdom against kingdom. There'll be famine on the earth, an increase of earthquakes, and all of this, he says, all of this is like birth pains. Intense evil and the backing off. A greater intensity of evil like contractions, giving birth to the end of the age. More evil and then less. More evil and then less. Left unchecked gets worse and worse and worse and worse. He said these are like birth pains, Jesus said. It's the coming of the end of the age. Do you realize that you could actually be living on the earth in a time in history when the earth will be no more? At the introduction of a tribulation period where there's nothing but chaos, the absence of God, the absence of righteousness, and total depravity and evil. Now look at your internet today. Look at your news. Look at your cable television. Does that seem impossible? Is this first century document not so irrelevant as maybe some thought, but actually very relevant to the times in which we live? And if it is so, and Jesus says, if it were not so, I would have told you, and everything he said came to pass, then maybe we ought to start looking at the world around us a little bit different, because it seems as though we are giving birth to something far worse than we actually have. And human beings, taken over by evil, are far more capable of doing things than maybe we realize, at least in our lifetime. I don't think it's irrelevant at all. Interesting, 70 AD, about 34 to 36 years after the death and resurrection of Christ, not one stone in those buildings was left upon another. If you go to Jerusalem today, there's no temple. The Romans invaded Jerusalem and blew up the temple. All the ingredients, the spices, the sulfur, the things beneath the temple that used for its daily operation were the very catalyst of a massive explosion by which these Herodian stones are no longer on top of one another. Fascinating. His prophecy came true. Yes, as the increase of wickedness in our world today increases, the love of many grow cold. And in the middle of it all, he says, keep watch. Keep watch. What does that mean? Pay attention. You think this is a joke? You think this is some kind of fantasy thing? Look at the world around you. Look the way it was 100 years ago. Look the way it is now, and project where it would be 100 years from now. Birth pains. Why, my friend, are we quick to embrace evil and its source, but a little slower to embrace a deity who combats it This is worth thinking about. Maybe the ISIS crisis is not only how to denigrate their ability to impact the world with evil, but maybe it's also a crisis on a personal level. What is it I believe? And what he said about this earth, is that true? For if it is, you have some decisions to make. Are you a follower of Christ, or are you resisting him? Are you for him, or are you against him? Are you willing to accept your own righteousness and your own performance on this earth to pay a holy God a price you cannot pay? Or are you willing to accept what he did on your behalf that you are not capable of doing? Are you going to secure your own eternal life? Or are you going to accept the gift of grace that he gave you? Was he playing a game that sunny day, foreknowing what this world would look like 2,000 years later? Or is he the Son of God? Are many being persecuted in his name and hated because of him, just like he said? Are there wars and rumors of wars, just like he said? Is nation rising up against nation and kingdom against kingdom? Are earthquakes not on the rise? Is there not, in a time when there's food to feed everyone on earth, is there not still famine on the earth? And did he not say the poor will always be among you? I don't think it was ludicrous. I think it was spot on. The ISIS crisis. Question, is that a personal crisis for you? Is Hollywood and all the apocalyptic type movies perhaps borrowing from the Bible and in some way, shape, or form accurate? When you saw the dust at the World Trade Center on 9/11 and the people running in terror for their life, did it not seem on some level apocalyptic to you? Is this a game? Is this some religious exercise? Or is there one who's truly personally died for you to provide you a way out of bondage, horror, terror, fear, apprehension, bondage, and the evil that seeks to destroy us all? This is for you to think about. That ISIS crisis might just be personal on some level. Let's deal with that, shall we? The ISIS crisis.